He is the author of 2 books and more than 200 scientific papers and book chapters. His research work has earned him many accolades, including a listing by Thomas Reuters as one of the world's most influential scientific minds. It is our pleasure to hear from him today. So if you would, please join me in welcoming our 2018 commencement speaker, Dr. Forrest Rohwer.
Hey everybody, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here. So when I set out to write this talk, I did basically what everybody does, is I opened a beer and I typed into Google how to give a great commencement speech. And in true internet fashion, I found that there's actually only one site that has written anything original, and then there are about 1 million other sites that link to that one site. So if you keep clicking on it, eventually you'll end up to this place where you're supposed to go, and you're given a whole bunch of standard platitudes and advice that you could have written with a beer and 10 minutes on the internet. So basically, as a commencement speaker, I'm supposed to keep this speech short, I should be funny, and I should inspire the graduates. The first problem with this formula is that I am a professor, and you're a captive audience, which means we're going to go 2 hours minimum, no matter what. The second problem is that literally no one has ever called me funny. In fact, they'll say that I have an inappropriate sense of humor, things of that nature. So if I say something that sounds weird or off-color, you should at least laugh or a nervous giggle just to make me feel a little better. And the third problem really is that the internet advice that we're supposed to give you is really not that interesting. Okay. So I've titled this speech, Why You Shouldn't Listen to the Commencement Speech. The list of commencement speeches advice that I'm supposed to tell you includes such pithy things as, you're going to fail and that's okay. You should figure out who you are, and you should nudge yourself to take more risks. To these points I say, don't fail, it sucks. Do your project, job, relationship, etc. correctly the first time. It'll save you a lot of suffering. Don't spend a lot of time figuring out who you are. Unfortunately, you're all human, okay? And too much introspection will just depress you. If you ever find yourself trying to find yourself, go watch an Avengers movie and you'll be much happier. And don't nudge yourself to take risks. Instead, embrace risks fully for the adrenaline rush. Adrenaline is totally worth pursuing. My life is full of adrenaline, both academically and physically. I get to discover things that nobody else has ever even thought of, and I do that like almost regularly. Okay? Being an academic, as soon as I discover something, I run out and I talk to the 2 people in the world that will listen to me, and then I start over again. But it is an amazing 5 minutes of adrenaline. Okay. Along this academic journey, I've also had my share of physical adrenaline rushes. I've been run over by a boat, slammed in the back by a shark, bitten by a poisonous snake, I've broken bones, and I've been swept to sea. I routinely jump into the water with hundreds of sharks swimming around me, and usually, to tell you the truth, I send in a graduate student before, just to be careful. And all of these things are some of the best things in my life. Okay? In 2013, I was in the Russian Arctic, and the goal was to gather yet more samples for the viruses. And basically what that meant is I was stuck on a Russian icebreaker, scuba diving in literally freezing water, and hiking along glaciers as polar bears stalked us. And all of this was paid by the National Geographic Society, which is a good deal. At some point, almost assuredly fueled by a vodka lunch, we decided that sampling walrus poop for viruses would be a good idea. Within hours, we had a plan. It wasn't a good plan, but it was a plan. And basically what we did is we put on our dry suits, and then we started swimming through ice floes, which are these places where you get the sea ice and you push yourself through. Okay? We crept through the ice floes to where the walruses were sitting in their walrus colony. Okay? As we got closer, the walruses, or walrus, I don't actually know, whatever, mini walruses, really started getting a little agitated. And apparently they'd seen scientists trying to steal their shit before, so they were like on to us. Okay? And finally, this big bull had enough, and he got up and he ran, literally charged us. They don't run, they like, whatever. They're fast, though. Okay? So to give you a feel, they're about a ton, big tusk, this sort of thing. And he got right up in my face, and he spit the biggest loogie you'd ever seen. Okay? Having made his point, Mr. Snot Spitter then backed off, went down in the water, and we got our fecal samples. And I remember every millisecond of that trip, right? It's wonderful. Okay? So being excited about your life really is the most important thing. Okay? So if you go back to the internet, you'll see there's a super famous commencement speech where the take-home point is to make your bed. Seriously, don't worry about making your bed. It's a dumb thing to spend your time on. Life is literally filled with a billion things better than making your bed. And if your bed should ever get made by, like, say, your mother, okay, find someone to help you mess it up again. Again, not a bad adrenaline rush. The Make Your Bed speech was given by a Navy SEAL who uses the underwater demolition training program in San Diego as a guide for structuring your life up into something completely boring. The speech moves from moving your bed to 9 other forgettable points, like never, ever give up. I live in San Diego. I know lots of Navy people, and I've even taught a couple of ex-Navy SEALs. And I guarantee that no one joins the SEALs to make their bed. They join the SEALs to jump out of airplanes, swim in the ocean at midnight, shoot big guns, and go to the bar and brag about it to girls later on. It's the adrenaline rush, and you should definitely not believe in the made the bed stories of commencement speakers. Another top commencement speech topic, blah, 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 is to tell the graduates to think differently, outside the box, etc. Again, this is a horrible idea. Okay? You just spent thousands, or actually probably hundreds of thousands of your parents' retirement money and or student loans to get a great education at the C of I. The professors spent years teaching you to think logically, and don't learn this hard work by thinking differently. Before you think outside of the box, you need to understand the box. I challenge you to remember the natural laws and logical arguments you've been taught and use them. Only when you really, really, really understand something will you start to see the edge of the box, and only then should you start to come up with new rules. A couple of years ago, I was in the gym, basically wondering why I was at the gym. My phone rang, and this very insistent lady asked if I could drop everything and come over to the hospital across town. Since this was a strange request that necessitated leaving the gym, I said yes. It turns out the lady's husband was dying of an infection caused by a bacteria called Iraqibacter. And by dying, I mean really dying. He had total organ failure and entered a coma. The doctors had given him a couple days at most. Iraqibacter is actually something you've heard of because it was a real problem during the Iraq War. It gets into wounds, and there's no way to actually kill it with the antibiotics we have. So the doctors don't have a lot of tools, but like everything on the planet, Iraqibacter gets viruses. And it turns out that I'm one of the world's experts in these viruses. Usually that's a lot like being an expert in different species of My Little Pony. Nobody cares at all. But in this case, the lady wanted to use the bacteria or the viruses to kill the Iraqibacteria that were killing her husband. And what we knew were the rules about how to do this. We weren't thinking out of the box. We just knew this is how you do the biology, this is how you do the chemistry to get those viruses to do what they wanted. And not thinking out of the box, we applied our knowledge and got the viruses to grow. We injected them into her husband. We killed that little nasty creature, or all those little nasty creatures. And 2 days later, he woke up. He's now fully recovered, and he's writing this book about being saved by viruses. Okay. So logical thinking is very good. Figure out why things work, why people do things, use the rules you've been taught. On the top of the commencement speech messages that I'm supposed to deliver is work hard. This is another horrible idea. Your grandparents and parents, and really all the previous generations since basically the Renaissance, have been working hard so that you could go to school and not work hard. Okay? Your job is to think hard and be even lazier. The pursuit of laziness is what makes humans unique. A coyote works hard to catch a squirrel for food. Humans set up an economic system where we buy T-bones at the supermarket. Soon, Amazon will deliver those steaks to your house via a drone. Now, that's really being lazy, and it sounds really good. A beaver will work endlessly to build wooden dams. Humans use engineering rules, bulldozers, and concrete to build dams. Soon, we'll have robots to drive those bulldozers and even make our beds. The only thing for the humans to do will be the engineering. That's the thinking part. Thinking hard is not easy. We all know that sometimes physical labor is much more satisfying and easier as a one-off solution. But if you come up with a solution to a problem, then you've got that solution forever. Again, look for the rules that make life easier. One more short story and one last point. While I was in the Arctic, I had an iceberg fall on me. Literally, an iceberg. We were scuba diving and sampling along the surface of what we called the Deathberg when we heard this massive cracking sound. I honestly thought the ship had run aground, and then I noticed that the wall of ice in front of me was moving. My student and I started to swim out of there as fast as possible, which was not very fast with about 70 pounds of scuba equipment and science stuff with us. We made it to the surface, and the Deathberg was still falling on us. It takes a long time for one of those big 4-story pieces of ice to roll over in the water. Terrifying, but a very slow, drawn-out terrifying. Eventually, they drove a boat in, they threw us a rope, and they dragged us out of the system. Okay? And when we got back, we were shaking like leaves. Again, it's adrenaline, and we were really starting to giggle and then laugh. We got back, had a beer, and nothing tastes quite as good as a beer after almost dying. And that brings me to my last point. Life is both exhilarating and stressful. People will tell you now that it's now more stressful than ever. They're basically false Cassandras and should be ignored. Life used to be really painful and really full of stress. Imagine how stressful it was back when the Black Plague was running through a city, or how divided the country was before the Civil War. We live in a true golden age with the tools, economy, and education to move humanity into a wonderful new future. All we really need to do is think hard and be even lazier. So when you're feeling stressed, remember to relax. There's the largest study of people that have made it into their 90s was published this year, and the single biggest favor that increased their odds of making it to 90 was 2 alcoholic drinks a day. It was better than going to the gym, right? And is it because alcohol is good for you? No, alcohol is still a poison, right? However, alcohol does relax you in the company of family and friends, and it will make your life happier and longer if you come up with a good way to relax. So don't get too stressed out. So 2018 graduates of CFI, I hope I've convinced you to embrace adrenaline rushes, to think clearly and have a beer at the end of the day when it's all done. And never, ever listen to the advice given by a commencement speaker. Congratulations.